Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a look at two countries that couldn't be closer, Canada and the United States. I mean, they share the longest border in the world, but when you peek under the hood at their economies, well, they can feel like they're on different planets. So let's get into it and figure out why. It's so easy to just lump these two together. They're allies, they're huge trading partners, they're friends. But the truth is, their deep down beliefs about how an economy should run have sent them on really different journeys. I mean, just look at this picture. It really says everything, doesn't it? That's the skyline of Detroit, Michigan, and you're looking at it from Windsor, Ontario. The only thing between them is a river. It's this crazy closeness that makes their economic differences so fascinating. And that brings us right to the big question, the mystery we're trying to solve here. How can two neighbors, this friendly and this connected, be so different economically? Well, to get to the bottom of it, we've got to dig into the fundamental values that are pulling the strings. Okay, so before we can understand any economic system, Canada's, the US's, anyone's, we have to start with the one problem they are all trying to solve. And that is the problem of scarcity. It all boils down to this really simple, universal truth. We humans want a lot of stuff, like basically unlimited stuff. But the resources we have to make that stuff, land, workers, materials, are limited. And that tension right there forces every single society to answer three huge questions. What are we going to make? How are we going to make it? And who gets the stuff once it's made? So a really helpful way to think about the different answers to those questions is to picture this economic continuum, this spectrum. Way over on one end, you've got a planned economy. That's where the government makes all the big decisions. And then, way on the other end, you have a market economy, where it's all about individual choices. Now, the thing is, most countries, including Canada and the US, aren't at the extremes. They land somewhere in the middle. And this chart here really lays it all out. In a planned system, the government owns the resources. In a market system, private individuals and companies do. And then you have a mixed economy, like Canada, which kind of, mixes both. The US, on the other hand, leans way more toward that market end. They really favor less government getting involved in things. So what's behind that difference? Why does Canada mix it up more while the US goes for the market? Well, it actually goes way back to the core values that built each country. It's really a story of cooperation versus individualism. Okay, check this out. Canada's founding principle was peace, order, and good government. See how that sounds? It's all about cooperation, thinking about the group, what's best for the public good. Now compare that to the US motto, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's a huge declaration for the individual, for personal freedom. And these aren't just fancy old-timey phrases. They are literally written into the DNA of their economic systems. But here's the thing. A country's spot on that spectrum isn't locked in forever. It can shift. Take the US, for example. Back in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal was a massive shift to the left. The government got way more involved. But then, decades later, you had President Ronald Reagan, who pulled the country hard in the other direction, a shift to the right, all about championing free market ideas. So this difference in philosophy isn't just talk. It has real, tangible consequences. And one of the clearest examples you can find in Canada is something called a crown corporation. So, what is a crown corporation? Simple. It's a company that's actually owned by the Canadian government. The government will start one of these for a few key reasons. Maybe to provide a service that's absolutely essential, or to kickstart some economic development, or even just to protect and promote Canadian culture. This is a total classic feature of a mixed economy. A perfect example is Via Rail. See, back in the 70s, private rail companies were starting to cut passenger routes because they just weren't making enough money. So the government stepped in and said, hold on, we think passenger rail is an essential service. And boom, they created their own company to keep the trains running for everyone. Here's another one, Petro-Canada. This was started up in 1975 to make sure that Canada had a major player in its own oil and gas industry to compete against the big foreign companies. Now it has since been sold off to private owners, which is a great reminder that the balance in a mixed economy is always shifting. And it's not always about trains and oil. Take the Canadian Museum of Civilization. It's a crown corporation, and its whole job is to preserve and share Canada's heritage. This is the government making a conscious decision that, hey, our national identity is a public good, and it's worth investing in. Okay, but here's the thing. No matter how much a government gets involved, there are some economic forces that are just universal. They're always at play. So to understand those, let's talk about the super important relationship between supply, demand, and donuts. Oh man, we have all been here, right? You want that one hot new thing. In this comic, it's the video game Super Cyborg City. And you finally get to the store, and it's gone. Sold out. The demand is through the roof, but the supply is zero. That feeling, that's scarcity in action. And as the store clerk here is explaining, the reasons why it sold out are actually pretty complicated. Maybe the factory couldn't make enough, there was a truckers' strike, the store priced it too low, or heck, maybe one person just came in and bought the last two. All these different things can mess with the supply chain. And then this happens. This is the market's natural response. When something is super popular and hard to get, the price goes up. Someone who was lucky enough to grab a copy earlier is now selling it for double the price. That is the law of supply and demand playing out right there on the sidewalk. Okay, so that brings us to competition and our donuts. Picture two donut shops. Shop A sells cheap, machine-made donuts by the dozen. Shop B sells these expensive, amazing, handcrafted donuts. This competition gives you, the customer, a choice. What do you care about more? A low price or top quality? And every dollar you spend is like casting a vote, sending a signal to the market about what you value. And all of this brings us right back to that huge philosophical question we started with. What kind of economic system actually creates the best quality of life for people? And how much or how little should the government get involved in all this? All right, let's look at it from the mixed economy point of view, using the Canadian film industry as an example. The argument goes like this. The Canadian market is just too small to go head-to-head with the Hollywood machine. So without government grants and support, those uniquely Canadian stories might never get made, and a piece of the country's identity would just disappear. But then you've got the market economy perspective, which says the complete opposite. The argument here is that government grants actually remove the incentive to be great. They think, hey, if a film is truly good, it'll find an audience no matter where it's from. They believe the market, that's you, the consumer, should be the ultimate judge of quality, not some government committee. And so, we end up right back where we started. It's a tale of two neighbors, and each one gives us a different answer to this really fundamental question. Is the public good best served by collective cooperation and government action, or is it best served by individual freedom and competition? Finding the right balance between those two ideas, well, that's the debate that continues to shape both of these incredible economies.